Ma'am, you need to come with us. We have reason to believe you're undocumented.
I was born in Detroit. I'm a registered nurse. This is my hospital ID.
We'll sort that out at the facility. Hands behind your back.
You're arresting an American citizen in front of her workplace. This is illegal.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agent Henry Kelly believed he was conducting standard protocol that morning. An unidentified caller had reported possible unauthorized workers at a medical center's parking area. For Kelly, this seemed like routine work. He performed countless similar operations throughout his tenure, depending on patterns and judgments that had gone unchallenged. However, when he confronted an African-American woman wearing medical scrubs after her lengthy overnight rotation and restrained her without confirming her legal status, he committed a devastating error. The individual Kelly detained was Lizzie Lescott, a 34-year-old emergency department nurse, native to Detroit, Michigan, and a third-generation American whose grandfather had fought in Vietnam. What Kelly failed to realize was that 4 separate recording devices worn by his unit captured every moment of the detention. Each unlawful action was preserved in footage that would ultimately cost federal taxpayers $14.8 million. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Content like this deserves broader attention, and your engagement enables us to continue bringing these accounts to the public. Kelly had served with the agency for 6 years at the Detroit Regional Office, accumulating a record that concerned civil liberties groups. 3 official grievances had been filed against him, each describing a consistent tendency to target people based on physical appearance rather than substantive evidence. His managers characterized him as zealous yet productive, applauding his detention statistics without examining his methodology. Kelly trusted his intuition, convinced that his experience had sharpened his ability to identify who had proper documentation and who didn't. In truth, his intuition reflected prejudice masked as professional judgment, preconceptions founded on bias rather than legal principles. The information arrived that morning from an unidentified source with a pronounced accent, alleging that unauthorized workers were employed at Detroit Memorial Hospital using fraudulent credentials. The caller provided no specific names or concrete details, merely ambiguous accusations that warranted investigation before enforcement action. Kelly didn't wait. He organized a 4-agent team, himself leading alongside agents Nathan Torres, Sarah Park, and Robert Hayes. All 4 were mandated to wear recording equipment during field assignments, a requirement instituted 2 years prior following numerous civil rights complaints. These devices were intended to protect both personnel and civilians by providing objective documentation of every encounter. None of them anticipated that morning that these recordings would constitute the principal evidence in one of the most significant civil rights settlements in agency history. Kelly's strategy was straightforward: monitor the exits during the morning personnel transition, identify anyone matching the profile, and initiate contact. The team positioned themselves in the parking area at 7 a.m., their recording devices activated. The early sun created elongated shadows across the pavement, the brilliant illumination ensuring optimal video capture quality. When Lizzie emerged through the automated entrance at 7:18 a.m., her dark complexion, her weary expression, her uniform bearing subtle marks from a prolonged night shift, something triggered in Kelly's consciousness. He signaled his team, and all 4 recording devices pivoted toward her, documenting her from various angles in the clear morning brightness as she crossed the parking area, squinting somewhat against the ascending sun. Lizzie had just completed one of her most demanding shifts. 3 trauma situations, 2 cardiac emergencies, and an overcrowded waiting area throughout the night. Her feet throbbed, her spine ached, and her sole desire was returning home for a shower and rest. She was searching for her keys, contemplating the leftover Italian food in her refrigerator, when she detected footsteps approaching from behind, multiple sets, rapid and deliberate. She rotated to observe 4 agents advancing, their silhouettes stark against the brightening atmosphere, outfitted in tactical equipment with agency badges prominently displayed. The chest-mounted recording devices were apparent, small lenses capturing everything in crystalline daylight clarity. Her stomach dropped. "Excuse me, ma'am," Kelly called out, his tone carrying that distinctive note of authority designed to intimidate. Torres's recording device captured Kelly's approach from the flank, every detail sharp in the morning brightness, while Park's camera documented Lizzie's face, her expression transitioning from confusion to alarm, every subtle reaction visible in the unforgiving illumination. Hayes positioned himself somewhat behind Lizzie, his device providing a rear perspective of the complete interaction. "We need to speak with you," Kelly stated. Lizzie halted, her hand clutching her keys so firmly her knuckles whitened. Park's camera captured the trembling in her fingers with perfect clarity. "May I help you?" she asked. Kelly advanced closer, his eyes examining her face, her uniform, seeking indicators of deception that existed solely in his imagination. "We're with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We've received intelligence about unauthorized workers at this medical facility. Can you provide identification and citizenship verification?" Lizzie's pulse accelerated, but she compelled herself to remain composed. All 4 cameras documented her response from different perspectives, the morning sunlight revealing every detail. "I'm an American citizen. I was born in Detroit. I'm employed here as a nurse." She reached deliberately for her bag, extracting her hospital identification badge, holding it visible. Torres's camera captured the ID with perfect clarity. The photograph, the name Lizzie Lescott, the designation. Registered nurse, emergency department, all visible and readable, impossible to overlook in the brilliant morning light. "This is my employee credential. My driver's license is in my wallet." Kelly barely acknowledged the ID. His recording device documented his dismissive motion, his gaze shifting away from the identification almost instantaneously. The other 3 cameras captured his body language from different angles, the way he crossed his arms, the tightening of his jaw. He'd already concluded she lacked proper documentation. Everything else was irrelevant noise. "This could be counterfeit," he stated, his voice captured distinctly on all 4 audio channels. "We're going to need you to accompany us for verification." Lizzie's hands trembled, visible on both Park and Torres's cameras in the harsh morning brightness, but her voice maintained steadiness. "Verification of what?" "I just presented my hospital ID. My driver's license contains my birth date and residence." "What precisely are you accusing me of?" Kelly's jaw tightened, the muscles working beneath his skin captured in high definition on his own device. Resistance invariably irritated him, particularly from individuals he believed had no right to resist. "Ma'am, you need to accompany us. We have grounds to believe you're undocumented. If you're being truthful, this will be resolved quickly." Torres shifted uncomfortably, his camera angle wavering slightly. He sensed something was problematic about this stop, but remained silent, unwilling to challenge Kelly's authority in the field. "Grounds to believe?" Lizzie's voice elevated, frustration breaking through, captured on all 4 audio channels simultaneously. "What grounds? I showed you my ID. I stated I was born here. What more do you require?" Kelly stepped nearer, invading her space. "Ma'am, if you don't cooperate, we can proceed the difficult way. Your choice." The threat hung in the atmosphere, preserved on 4 separate recordings. Lizzie surveyed the parking area. The morning shift was arriving, cars pulling in steadily, and several colleagues were walking toward the hospital entrance. Some glanced over with concern, a few slowing their pace to observe the confrontation unfolding in broad daylight. "I'm cooperating," Lizzie said, forcing herself to breathe. "But you're violating my rights. You have no warrant, no probable cause, nothing but an assumption based on my appearance." Kelly's face flushed, the color change clearly visible in the unforgiving daylight. "Don't make this about race. This concerns immigration law." "Then show me the evidence," Lizzie shot back. "Show me what gave you probable cause to stop me. Because currently it appears you saw a black woman in a parking lot and decided she must be illegal. Should immigration enforcement personnel be required to verify citizenship before making arrests? Share your thoughts below. This wasn't merely a case of mistaken identity. This was racial profiling backed by federal authority, with consequences that would haunt everyone involved. Kelly retrieved his handcuffs, the metallic sound as he opened them captured clearly. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Lizzie's blood ran cold. "You're arresting me for what?" "Suspected immigration violation and failure to provide adequate documentation." The words were bureaucratic nonsense, legal-sounding phrases masking the absence of any genuine justification. "This is insane," Lizzie said, her voice trembling now. "I'm a nurse. I work here. I'm an American citizen. You can verify everything I've stated with one phone call." Park's camera captured Lizzie's face in the morning light, tears beginning to form but not yet falling, the sunlight reflecting off the moisture. "We'll sort that out at the facility," Kelly replied coldly. "Hands behind your back." Lizzie hesitated, her body language screaming resistance even as her mind calculated the danger. She knew the statistics. She knew what happened to people, especially black people, who resisted federal agents. She turned slowly, placing her hands behind her back. Kelly's camera recorded his own perspective as he stepped forward and secured the restraints around her wrists. The metallic click echoed on all 4 audio feeds. "These are too tight," Lizzie said, her voice strained. Park's camera captured her wrists in the bright morning light, the metal cutting into her skin, already leaving red marks clearly visible. "They're fine," Kelly replied dismissively, testing them with a sharp tug. The walk to the agency van felt surreal. All 4 cameras recorded the journey from different angles in perfect daylight detail. Kelly's camera showed his view from behind Lizzie, his hand on her shoulder guiding her forward with more force than necessary. Park's camera from the side captured Lizzie's profile, her jaw set, her eyes straight ahead, refusing to look at the colleagues who had stopped to stare. Torres's camera recorded the growing crowd of hospital staff, more visible now in the morning light, some pulling out their phones to record, others standing frozen in shock. Hayes's camera, bringing up the rear, captured the full scene. 4 federal agents in tactical gear escorting a handcuffed nurse across the parking lot of her own workplace in broad daylight. "Lizzie," a voice called out. It was Dr. Patricia Chen, one of the attending physicians Lizzie worked with. Chen's face was a mask of confusion and horror, captured clearly on Torres's camera in the morning sunlight. "What's happening?" "They're arresting me," Lizzie called back, her voice breaking. Park's camera recorded the tear that finally spilled down her cheek. "They think I'm undocumented." "She's American," Chen shouted, starting forward. Hayes's camera recorded him stepping into her path, his hand raised. "Ma'am, step back. This is federal business." "Federal business?" Chen's voice rose, captured on all 4 audio feeds. "She's one of our best nurses. She was born here. This is insane." "Ma'am, final warning," Hayes said firmly. Kelly's camera recorded him opening the back door of the van, a white vehicle with small windows and no interior handles. "Watch your head," he said, his hand pushing down on Lizzie's head as he guided her into the seat. Torres's camera, positioned outside the van, captured Lizzie's face one more time before the door closed. Her expression a mixture of fear, rage, and disbelief, illuminated by the morning sun. The van's interior had its own camera system, separate from the body cameras, but all 4 agents kept their devices running. Kelly climbed into the driver's seat, his camera now facing forward toward the windshield. Torres sat in the passenger seat, his camera angled back toward the cargo area where Lizzie sat. Park and Hayes climbed into a second vehicle to follow. "You comfortable back there?" Kelly asked, his tone sarcastic. "No," Lizzie said quietly. "I'm not comfortable. I'm in handcuffs in the back of a van despite being an American citizen who committed no crime." The drive to the detention facility took 40 minutes. All 4 recording devices remained active. Torres's camera stayed trained on Lizzie in the back, documenting her sitting in silence, her chest rising and falling with each controlled breath, her face turned toward the small window, watching the city pass by in morning sunlight. When they arrived at the facility, Park and Hayes pulled in behind them. All 4 cameras captured the exterior of the building, a nondescript concrete structure with high fences and razor wire, stark in the morning light. At the intake desk, the processing officer, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a nameplate reading Officer Martinez, began the standard questions. "Name?" "Lizzie Lescott." All 4 cameras recorded her response. "Date of birth?" "March 15, 1990. "Place of birth?" "Detroit, Michigan." Martinez's fingers paused. She looked up. "You were born in Detroit?" "Yes. I'm an American citizen. I've told these agents repeatedly. They arrested me anyway." Martinez looked at Kelly, her expression skeptical. "She could be lying," Kelly said. "Could be using a stolen identity. We need to run a full background check." "I'm not lying," Lizzie said, her voice rising. "I'm a registered nurse at Detroit Memorial Hospital. I've worked there for 6 years. My nursing license number is RN471893. Look it up. Call the hospital. Call the Michigan Board of Nursing. Everything will verify what I'm telling you." Martinez's expression shifted, doubt creeping in. She typed on the keyboard, searching databases. "What's your social security number?" Lizzie recited it, the numbers captured on all 4 audio feeds. Martinez typed, waited, then her eyes widened. Hayes' camera recorded her expression changing from skepticism to concern to outright alarm. "She's in the system," Martinez said slowly. "Born in Detroit. Valid social security number issued in 1990. No immigration holds, no warrants, nothing." Kelly stepped closer to the monitor. "That doesn't prove anything. Run a deeper check." "I already did," Martinez replied, her voice tight. "She's a licensed RN in Michigan. Active status, no disciplinary actions. She's been paying taxes at the same address for 6 years. She has a valid U.S. passport that was renewed 18 months ago." The silence that followed was captured on all 4 cameras. Torres was the first to speak, his voice uncertain. "So she's telling the truth." "Appears so," Martinez said coldly, staring at Kelly. "You arrested an American citizen." Kelly's face flushed red. "We had a tip. We had reasonable suspicion." "Based on what?" Martinez demanded. Kelly had no answer. The silence stretched for 10 full seconds, every moment documented from multiple angles. "I want my phone call," Lizzie said, breaking the silence. "Now." Hayes' camera recorded the walk to a small room with a single phone on a metal desk. Lizzie's hands were shaking as she dialed. Her mother answered on the second ring. "Mom," Lizzie's voice cracked, hours of composure finally shattering. "I've been arrested. ICE arrested me. I'm at a detention facility." Both cameras captured the tears streaming down her face now, her body shaking with sobs. Her mother's scream was so loud it was picked up by both body camera microphones. "What? Baby, what are you talking about? You're American." "I know, Mom. I told them. I showed them my ID. They didn't care. They arrested me anyway. I need you to call a lawyer. Get someone down here, please." The desperation in her voice was palpable. Her mother was crying now, but her voice steadied, the strength of a parent taking over. "I'm calling right now. Don't say anything else to them. Don't answer any more questions. We're going to get you out. Do you hear me? We're getting you out." "I hear you," Lizzie whispered. Outside, Lizzie's mother called her son David, Lizzie's younger brother, who worked as a paralegal at a civil rights firm. David listened to the story with growing fury, then immediately called his boss, attorney Michael Stevens. Stevens was a veteran civil rights lawyer with 20 years of experience and a reputation for taking on cases that other attorneys considered too difficult or too controversial. He listened to David's recounting of events, asked 3 pointed questions, then said, "I'm taking this case. Get me everything. Birth certificate, nursing license, employment records, passport, everything that proves she's a citizen. I'm heading to that facility now." At 12:18 p.m., 5 hours after Lizzie's arrest, Michael Stevens arrived at the facility. His entrance was captured on facility security cameras and on Torres's body camera. Stevens was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a leather briefcase that he set down on the intake desk with deliberate force. "I'm Michael Stevens, attorney for Lizzie Lescott," he announced. "I'm here to secure her immediate release." Martinez looked relieved. "I'll get the supervisor." The supervisor, Patricia Sanchez, arrived within minutes. All 4 agents were called to the front office, their body cameras capturing the meeting from multiple angles. Stevens opened his briefcase and began laying documents on the desk one by one, each paper placed with precise deliberation. Lizzie Lescott was born in Detroit on March 15, 1990. Here's her birth certificate, certified copy with raised seal. She's a licensed registered nurse in the state of Michigan. Here's her license, active and current. She's employed at Detroit Memorial Hospital and has been for 6 years. Here's her employment verification, her tax returns for the past 6 years, and a letter from the hospital administrator confirming her citizenship and employment status. She has a valid U.S. passport. Here it is. Issued by the U.S. Department of State. Valid until 2028. Stevens looked at each agent in turn. "Now," he said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority, "explain to me how your agents determined she was undocumented." The silence was deafening. Sanchez turned to Kelly. "Agent Kelly, what evidence did you have to make this arrest?" Kelly struggled to answer. We received a tip about undocumented workers at the hospital. She matched the description. What description? Stevens demanded, stepping closer. The anonymous tip didn't include any names, any specific descriptions, any identifying information. So tell me, Agent Kelly, what exactly did Ms. Lescott match? The answer hung unspoken in the air, obvious to everyone present and preserved on 4 separate recordings. She's black, Stevens said flatly, stating what everyone was thinking. That's the only description she matched. You saw a black woman in a parking lot and decided she must be illegal. That's called racial profiling, Agent Kelly, and it's illegal. Sanchez's voice cut through the silence, tight with barely controlled fury. Release her immediately. Lizzie was brought out of the holding area at 12:47 p.m., 5.5 hours after her arrest. All 4 body cameras captured her emergence. Her scrubs wrinkled, her eyes red and swollen, her wrists bruised. Stevens moved toward her immediately, and Park's camera recorded Lizzie collapsing against him, her body shaking with sobs. They had no right, she said. I told them. I showed them everything. They didn't care. I know, Stevens said quietly, and they're going to answer for it. Before leaving, Stevens turned to Sanchez. I want copies of all body camera footage from this incident. All 4 agents, full recordings from the moment they activated their cameras until now. Sanchez nodded slowly. That's your right under the Freedom of Information Act. We'll process the request. I don't want it processed, Stevens replied, his voice hardening. I want it preserved as evidence right now before anything has a chance to be lost or corrupted. His implication was clear. I'll secure the footage personally, Sanchez said. You'll have copies within 48 hours. The footage was preserved that afternoon. All 4 body cameras, nearly 6 hours of recording from multiple angles, was copied to secure servers, along with timestamps and metadata proving the footage was authentic and unaltered. The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later. Lizzie Lescott versus United States Department of Homeland Security, Henry Kelly, Nathan Torres, Sarah Park, Robert Hayes, and Patricia Sanchez. The charges were extensive. False arrest, illegal detention, violation of civil rights under the 4th and 14th Amendments, racial profiling, intentional infliction of emotional distress, deprivation of rights under color of law. The evidence was unprecedented in its completeness. 4 body cameras, each providing a different angle of the same incident. Every word spoken was captured on multiple audio feeds. Every movement, every gesture, every moment of Lizzie's fear and the agent's aggression was documented in high-definition video, much of it in perfect daylight clarity. Stevens had handled hundreds of civil rights cases, but he had never had evidence this comprehensive. In his opening statement, he told the jury, "You're not going to have to take anyone's word for what happened that morning. You're going to see it from 4 different perspectives in broad daylight with perfect video quality. You're going to hear every word. And when you do, you're going to understand that this wasn't a mistake. This was racial profiling, pure and simple, executed by federal agents who believed their badges made them untouchable. The federal government tried to settle early. $200,000 and a formal apology. Stevens refused. They came back with $500,000. Refused. $1 million. Refused. This isn't about money, Stevens told Lizzie during one of their strategy sessions. This is about accountability, about making sure every ICE agent in this country knows that they can't treat citizens like criminals based on the color of their skin. The case went to trial 16 months after Lizzie's arrest. The courtroom was packed every day, media filling the back rows, civil rights advocates and community members lining up hours before the doors opened to secure a seat. The body camera footage was the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. On the trial's 3rd day, all 4 recordings were played simultaneously on 4 large screens positioned around the courtroom. The jury watched in absolute silence as the arrest unfolded from multiple perspectives. They saw Kelly's dismissive gesture when Lizzie showed her hospital ID. They saw Torres's uncomfortable shifting. They saw Hayes stepping back, distancing himself. They saw Lizzie's fear, her tears, her bruised wrists, captured from every angle in crystal clear video. The audio was devastating. Played through the courtroom sound system, every word was crystal clear. Kelly's threat, "We can do this the hard way," Lizzie's desperate assertion, "I'm an American citizen," the click of handcuffs, the suppressed sobs during the drive. When the footage ended, the courtroom remained silent for a full 30 seconds. Several jurors were crying. Lizzie testified for 4 hours, walking the jury through every moment of that morning. The exhaustion after her overnight shift, the terror when she saw the agents approaching, the humiliation of being handcuffed in front of her colleagues in broad daylight, the cold fear of detention. Her voice shook, but she didn't break. She wanted the jury to understand not just what had happened, but what it felt like to be treated like a criminal in your own country. Kelly's testimony was catastrophic. Under cross-examination, Stevens systematically dismantled every justification he offered. You said you had reasonable suspicion. What was it? The anonymous tip mentioned the hospital. But it didn't mention Ms. Lescott by name, did it? No. It didn't provide a description of any specific individual? No. So what made you approach Ms. Lescott specifically? Silence. Agent Kelly, I'll ask again. What made you single out Ms. Lescott from all the people leaving that hospital? She matched a profile. What profile? More silence. Agent Kelly, the body camera footage shows dozens of people leaving that hospital during your operation. People of various races, ages, and genders. But you only stopped Ms. Lescott. Why? Kelly's voice was barely audible. I thought she looked suspicious. Looked suspicious? Oh, be specific. I can't. I don't know. It was instinct. Instinct based on what? Her race. No. Then what? Her scrubs? Her hospital ID? The fact that she was walking to her car? What about Ms. Lescott was suspicious? Kelly had no answer. The prosecution called expert witnesses who explained how implicit bias affects law enforcement decisions, how racial profiling operates, and how the Fourth Amendment protects citizens from unreasonable search and seizure. The defense tried to argue that ICE agents operate under difficult circumstances and sometimes make honest mistakes. Stevens destroyed that argument in his closing. Honest mistakes are forgiven. But this wasn't an honest mistake. Agent Kelly saw a black woman and assumed she was undocumented. He ignored her hospital ID. He dismissed her assertion of citizenship. He arrested her without probable cause and detained her for hours despite having no evidence. That's not a mistake. That's racial profiling, and it violated Ms. Lescott's constitutional rights. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. The damages phase took another week. The jury heard testimony about Lizzie's emotional trauma, her nightmares, her fear of leaving her house, her inability to return to work at the hospital where she'd been arrested. They heard from her psychologist about her diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. They heard from her mother about watching her daughter, a third-generation American, treated like a criminal. When the jury announced the damages, the courtroom erupted. $8 million in compensatory damages for emotional distress, lost wages, medical expenses, and violation of constitutional rights. $6.8 million in punitive damages, specifically calculated to send a message to ICE and other federal agencies. Total, $14.8 million. Lizzie broke down crying, surrounded by her family. Stevens stood quietly watching the jury, these 12 ordinary citizens who had looked at the evidence and decided that racial profiling would not be tolerated, even when committed by federal agents. Kelly was terminated within hours of the verdict. Torres, Park, and Hayes were suspended pending review. Torres eventually resigned, unable to continue in law enforcement after being part of such a visible civil rights violation. Park and Hayes were reassigned to desk positions, their field careers effectively over. The Department of Homeland Security announced comprehensive reforms. Mandatory implicit bias training for all ICE agents, stricter protocols requiring citizenship verification before any arrest, independent review of all immigration detentions, a new policy requiring body camera footage to be preserved for a minimum of 5 years in any case involving a disputed arrest. Lizzie used part of her settlement to establish the Lescott Civil Rights Legal Fund, providing free legal representation to others wrongfully detained by immigration authorities. She became a powerful advocate for reform, testifying before Congress, speaking at universities, sharing her story with anyone who would listen. The body camera footage became a teaching tool in law schools and police academies, a stark example of how racial bias can lead to civil rights violations and how technology can provide irrefutable evidence of misconduct. And in ICE offices across the country, the case of Lizzie Lescott became legend. A cautionary tale about the consequences of racial profiling, told in training sessions and whispered in hallways. A reminder that body cameras cut both ways, protecting good agents but exposing those who abuse their authority. 4 cameras. 4 perspectives. 1 undeniable truth. Racial profiling is illegal, expensive, and captured in high definition. If you believe that citizenship should be verified before arrest, that racial profiling has no place in law enforcement, and that justice requires holding powerful institutions accountable, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Tomorrow we have another story of courage and accountability that you won't want to miss. Because the truth, when recorded from 4 different angles and proven beyond any doubt, has the power to change not just individual lives but entire systems.